Well, welcome everyone. Welcome to our 89th meeting of the board. Just a note, I do have to leave at 9 o'clock this morning, but I think we'll be able to get through all of our action items before then. And if I do have to take off at 9, hopefully somebody can adjourn the meeting. But let's begin. I don't believe the October minutes are out yet, right? So we'll probably approve those at our next meeting. Michael, is that the case?
Yeah, I apologize. We were doing some reorganization with our file system, and I went to the file folder to get the minutes, and the whole file folder wasn't there. So we're just kind of trying to track those down. I have a member from our office.
Okay, we'll just move those to our next meeting and approve them at our next meeting. Yeah. So we'll move on to action item 2B, which is the Fargo Title 6 plan. Sean.
Yeah, thank you. So every 3 years, we're required to submit an updated Title VI program. And so this is very similar to the ones the board has reviewed in the past. However, it's just been updated with information from the last 3 years. We updated Moorhead's last year, and this year Fargo's is due. So it's for the board's review and recommendation that they approve us moving forward with this, going to the City Commission for approval.
Any questions for Sean? Sean, this is just a mandatory type program that we review on an annual basis. Any changes to the plan at all, really?
No, sir. Just updated with information from the last 3 years. So.
Okay. Does any of the members of the board have any questions for Sean? Hearing no question, we'd entertain a motion to recommend that this be forwarded to the Fargo City Commission. Is that correct, Sean? That would be the motion?
That's true, yep.
This is Brad. I'll make the motion.
Okay, we have first by Brad.
This is Paul. I'll second.
Second by Paul. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signal by saying aye.
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 Opposed? All right, motion is carried. Thanks, Sean. I'll move on to item 2C, which is a 2023 preliminary budget capital and highlights. Julie and Lori, I'll turn it over to you.
Brian, could you put up the action PowerPoint? And move slides to forward a couple. One more. There we go. And Julie's up first.
Okay, thank you. Every year, of course, we have to bring the budget forward. Fargo is starting the budget process extra early this year, which is fine. Our finance director, in case anyone hasn't heard, Kent Costin is retiring. So we're trying to move things up a little bit, and while we still have him available to help us with this process. So what you're looking at there is the City of Fargo Capital Improvement Plan for 2023 for transit. My apologies, I did find one error when I was looking at this last night. It's the very first item, which is replace the 2010 para scheduling software. The numbers, it should be 80,000 federal share and 20,000 local share, which would change the local share match grand total to 574,800 instead of that 561,500. So my apologies on that. I should have caught that before it went out. But the second, so we are going to share the para scheduling software with the City of Moorhead. So you'll see that on Lori's plan. Replacing the 2012 AVA system, which is the automatic vehicle announcement system. Fargo's share of that is in the plan. We have some miscellaneous support equipment, which would be our informational interactive kiosks and some computers. We are replacing a toolcat that is in conjunction with City of Moorhead as well. We are planning on upgrade on the Metro Transit garage. This is all if we can secure the funding. That would also be shared with Moorhead. We have the mobility manager salary, which is shared with Moorhead. Fargo gets the grant, and then Moorhead shares in the cost. We have replacement of 2 fixed route buses, so those are the large ones, and replacement of 2 of the paratransit buses. So my motion is to provide the 2023 capital improvement plan to the Fargo budget team and recommend the 2023 projects for consideration in the 2023 budget with that one change, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Any questions for Julie? Julie, how does this proposal compare to previous years? Is it kind of in line, similar, would you say?
It is, yeah, it is very similar to the previous years in years going forward. Really the only thing that changes a lot are the special projects if we have them. And what's nice is if we can cost share with Moorhead in those. So yeah, it's very typical budget.
Okay. Any other questions for Julie? If none, we have the recommended motion on your attachment. Would you entertain that at this time?
This is Brad. I'll make the motion.
Larry, I'll second.
Okay, we have a first by Brad, second by Larry. Hearing any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried.
Thank you.
Next slide.
Thank you. Thanks, Brian. This is the Fargo Transit 2023 operating budget as opposed to capital. There's a couple things coming up that are a little bit unknown, like the cost of fuel. We are locked in till pricing until the end of this year, but after that, we have to go back out for bids again for the first 6 months of 2023. So that's an unknown at this point. We have some technical support that will be changing due to the fact that we'll be buying different operating systems and softwares. Snow removal, snow hauling, those 2 contracts are up for renewal. And our paratransit costs are going up because our ridership has gone up tremendously. And then we have some farebox cards that would be something to go with the new farebox system that we've got. So what I did was I broke out our operating budget by Fargo Fixed Route, Paratransit, the Ground Transportation Center, Planning, Mobility Management, and then the Metro Transit Garage. You'll see that on the right-hand side. 2022 is there, and 2023 proposed is there as well. Overall, it's about a 7% increase in the budget. That would be on the high end. So if there's any, hopefully, savings with fuel or any of those other ones that I pointed out, it would be a little less than that. But right now, that's what I'm projecting for the budget coming up.
Okay, questions for Julie on the operating budget?
Oh, and since this slide is up, I do want to note that, Moorhead participates in the Paratransit, the Ground Transportation Center, the Mobility Management, and the Metro Transit Garage. So there are costs. Some of those costs are Moorhead paid.
Yes, thank you.
And Julie, you have a recommended motion on the bottom of your attachment, correct?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I do. Yeah. To provide the 2023 operating budget to the Fargo budget team and recommend the projections for consideration in the 2023 budget.
Okay. Hearing no questions at this point, we'd entertain a motion.
This is Steve Lindaus. I'll move to recommend approval of the Fargo proposed 2023 operating budget.
We have a first.
This is Strand. I'll second.
And we have a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. All right, thank you, Julie. I think we'll move on to Lori, the Moorhead proposals.
Yes, please. Thank you. So the 5-year capital improvement plan is in your packet, and I've removed the 2023 piece so you can see that and how that budget pulls together. The state of Minnesota has already selected or pre-selected 2023 capital projects, and so the grant funds are available for all of these, the projects that are listed here. We are slowly replacing all of our passenger shelters, doing 1 or 2 each year. Most of our passenger shelters are from 1980, and so some of the concrete's more newer than the shelters themselves. We keep moving those around, but we are looking at replacing 2 shelters in 2023. We have a replacement paratransit vehicle, and as Julie noted, we have some joint projects for some facility improvements at the Metro Transit garage, things like replacing our bus washer and recarpeting and doing some improvements in the building where the vehicles are stored and admin offices are, and then replacing our 2009 Toolcat, and then the technology that Julie also mentioned that we're participating in, the auto vehicle location, auto vehicle announcement system, and the paratransit scheduling software. So the total project costs are $781,600, and the city of Moorhead allocates $150,000 a year for capital improvement plans for transit. So we're using most of that. We're putting $3,000 in reserve for some of the future larger projects coming down in the plan when we replace our large buses and such. So that is the plan at this time, and there's a recommended motion to provide the 2023-2027 capital improvement plan to the Moorhead City Manager and recommend the 2023 projects for consideration in the 2023 budget.
Great questions for Lori. Lori, federal and state grant funding staying pretty, this is pretty normal. There hasn't been much changes in that area. This is typical.
Well, we get an apportionment each year, and we're not spending the full apportionment at this time. We are allowed to bank that for 5 to 6 years so that we can build up for larger purchases like large bus replacements. So in 2023, it was 2022's funds with the infrastructure bill, there is a large increase in federal funding of 30% the first year of the bill, and then it goes to 3% from there. So there is a little bit of a jump that came through.
Okay. Any other questions for Lori? All right, if none, we have the recommended motion on her capital motion at this time.
So this is Steve Lindas. I'll make that recommended motion.
This is Paul. I'll second that motion.
All right, we have a first by Steve, a second by Paul. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signal by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion is carried. All right, on to the operating budget considerations.
Okay, so Moorhead's budgets are not started up yet. Our grants are due to the state of Minnesota in June of this year for next year's grants. The state of Minnesota has indicated in a preliminary meeting with us that they are looking to increase the operating budgets from 7 to 10% to address staff shortages and wage increases needed across the state of Minnesota. They also recognize the fuel prices are up, so we had a meeting yesterday, which was after this slide was put together, that it may be a little bit higher, at least 10%, because of the fuel prices that are coming as well. There's no new service changes being proposed in the 2023 budget. We're still recovering from COVID, and we still are with our staff shortages, which we'll talk about later, having issues with fully putting our service out on the streets at this time. And so we're not looking to increase service levels next year at all. And First Transit's contract is done at the end of 2022. We have option years in that contract, and we'll talk about that later as well. So we're negotiating some increases for 2023 in the First Transit operating contract. And then the city of Moorhead non-union employees have settled for a 3% cost of living increase for 2023. And then there's, we have some fare changes that are going into effect that we don't know how they'll affect the revenues and expenses next year. Our smart cards have chips in them, and they're more expensive than they were, almost twice as expensive as they were. So, there's a lot of costs with bus cards and things like that we're seeing on the rise. So at this time, the recommended motion is to direct staff to move forward with the operating budgets and grant applications for 2023 in coordination with the Moorhead City Manager based on the considerations listed above, and to bring back a final 2023 budget at the regularly scheduled meeting in July.
Okay, questions for Lori?
Lori, and I guess I'm wondering about the fares for paratransit. Is there any talk about increasing those fares in 2023?
No, we have no discussions on increasing fares.
Okay.
So, Laura, this is Steve. This is probably an unfair question in the sense that you already noticed that fuel prices are increasing, and you probably don't have a crystal ball to figure it out. But I don't know, are there state or any other type of possibilities to try to address? Otherwise, we're left to kind of guess when the prices might go low to put in a contract or.
The state of Minnesota has an economic forecaster that will come up with an average cost that they'll provide for our grant application. And I know that Jordan will talk about this later in the meeting about the process that Fargo uses to bid out fuel, attempting to do 6 months at a time and get some good prices that way. So, and Jordan, feel free to answer that question as well.
Yeah, from what we're, like Lori said, the city of Fargo bids out 6 months in advance for the following. So in June here, we'll bid out for the first and second quarters of 2023. So fuel prices in June will kind of dictate what we would pay the beginning part of 2023. The reason we do it 6 months in advance is because we do have some flexibility there to wait. If we feel like the prices may come down, we can wait a little longer before we go out for those bids. So from what we're seeing and from what we're reading, fuel prices are high now. They're going to be high through the beginning of the summer. Obviously, U.S. production is going to increase with those high oil prices, which should bring the cost down. So end of summer into the fall, into 2023, fuel prices should be lower than what they are now. But it's going to be that timing of when we get the bid out there and get it under contract. So 2 months ago, everyone thought it was going to dive bomb, and now it's twice what it was. So the experts don't even know. So if I knew what fuel prices were going to do, I wouldn't be working here. But so it's a game, and it really is an estimate. So we'll just kind of play it by ear as we go here. So.
Any other questions for Lori?
There are no other questions. I will make the recommended motion.
Okay, we have a first.
Jim Ossis makes a motion.
A second by Jim. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. All right, we'll move on our agenda. We'll move on to item number 3A. Lori and Julie.
Thanks, Brian. You can bring up the informational items. Thank you. Go ahead, Julie.
Okay, well, feel free, obviously, Lori, jump in. Lori mentioned it briefly, but we're facing a new contract amendment with First Transit, who's our driver and management service provider. And what we have been experiencing is some pretty significant driver shortages. And this has been going on since COVID and even before COVID. So in answer to that, we had to actually adjust some of our service hours and frequencies because we just literally could not cover the service with the number of drivers that we had. So in order to attract new drivers, new staff, and retain our existing staff, we've been working with First Transit, and we've recommended a strategy that would include pay increases and some more very concentrated advertising for those positions. So the following contract amendments, if you look at your slide there, were approved by Fargo City Commission and Moorhead Council, where we took it forward to increase the starting pay for drivers by 10% from 19, and this is a starting wage, so $19.30 per hour up to $21.23 per hour, along with reducing the number of steps that you have on your progression scale. So we went from 25 steps to get to the highest wage down to 11 steps. So we compressed that down. So the drivers at a minimum would receive a 10% increase and advance to the next closest step on their current or the new pay step. So that would be one part of the proposal. And then increase our First Transit management fee to cover wage increases averaging about 5%. That would be for the road supervisors, the ops manager, safety supervisor, and their payroll clerk, which is all part of their management team that manages the drivers for us. So, Lori, feel free to jump in there and add anything I might have missed.
Yeah, that was all approved, and we're still in negotiations for the 2023 option year with First Transit, and they are unionized, so they are working through this with the union prior to implementation. Yeah. So this was to become effective January of 2022 during the current contract year as an amendment, and then the next amendment would be the option year of 2023 and opening that one up. And the step increases are fairly good jumps in pay, along with cost of living increases because of the compressed scale. So I think that it is a good scale now for drivers to attract them to our system. And we also added some advertising and things too to get more the message out there.
Yeah.
You want to do the
next slide? Yeah.
Yeah, next slide. Yeah. Yeah, so these are our other strategies that we're talking about. I'll let you talk about the Ground Transportation Center budget, Julie.
Oh, okay. Yeah. With the Ground Transportation Center, that includes our dispatchers that we took on as city employees at the beginning of last year. So they are now staff that we have as City of Fargo employees versus they used to be contract employees along with the drivers. I will say it has worked out tremendously to have them as our city employees. It's nice to have them on board as part of the team, but it also helps us have a lot more control, and it's just a better setup for us from all angles. So we did have increases, in similarity to the drivers, that we did increase the dispatcher pay by 10%, so that we kept that continuity across the board there. Laura, you want to go ahead on the next?
Yeah, we talked about the option year already for the First Transit contract, but I put a picture up there of the new ad that we have on 10 of the buses. First Transit placed that ad there. We designed it for them, and First Transit tells us that it is attracting drivers to come in the door. He asks them each time someone applies, how they heard about it, and a large number of them saw the ad on the buses, so that's working very well for bringing people in the door. Next slide. Any questions on that? I'm sorry. Okay, so temporary service reductions. Cole, I think, and Taryn, you were going to address these?
Yes. So as she mentioned, those driver shortages have required us to make some temporary service reductions. And those began on January 10th. And really, when we weren't able to fill the available driver slots, that was causing a lot of upheaval for our riders. So we did this proactive action to make sure that our service is more reliable for the riders, so that rather than, canceling a route the day of, we could make that proactive motion. So currently all services are ending at 9:45 p.m., both in Fargo and Moorhead. Plus we had additional timetable reductions to specific routes. And this was an expansion of some service cuts we did do last fall, starting November 8th, where we reduced some of the timetables on 2:15 and the Taprite Industrial Park. And currently we've been telling our riders that is in effect until at least May of this year, and that we will give 2 weeks notice before we reinstate any of our services. And that reinstatement might happen gradually. So the communication with our riders, we tried to make sure that we had very broad communication on this topic. We did news release to local media, our website news post, rider alerts, which are those targeted email blasts, Facebook and Twitter posts, and we put up physical posters at the Ground Transportation Center. And next slide. So here is just a more detailed list of all of the changes that were made by route. Once again, at the top, both match paratransit and fixed route ending at 9:45 all days of the week. In Route 2, we do have a bus that we call 2C, which is that extra bus that runs during the school year between 2:30 and 6:30. And we did suspend that route starting back in November. And then Cole is going to talk about some of the Fargo changes.
Yeah, a majority of the cuts that we did were on the Fargo side of our routes. Majority of the cuts that we did were reducing routes from hourly service or half-hour service to hourly service. We saw that for routes 11, 13, and 14. Route 15, we did initially bring down to 3 buses back in November. Now we currently have it with 2 buses going all day with a 3rd bus during peak hours from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. The only route that we completely discontinued was Route 32W. And thought on that is Route 32E essentially serves the same area, and Route 32W was only 4 hours during the day. Route 33 is an NDSU route that we dropped from 3 buses en route to 2 buses, bringing it down to 10-minute service all day instead of having 10-minute service, 7-minute service during peak times, and then back to 10-minute service towards the end of the day. NDSU Taprite hours were adjusted. They still have the same number of hours as they did before. They're just shifted upwards to match the new closing time that we have of 9:45 p.m. And the Taprite Industrial Park service, we did initially cut the Saturday service back in November, and we've continued to do that with these new service cuts.
Next slide. Anybody have any questions on the route changes that we made?
Any comments from customers? I know that, obviously grocery stores, and certainly you're not alone in adjusting service hours. A lot of grocery stores closing earlier, but did you get much complaints or issues or comments with the adjustments, or did everybody kind of expect with everything going on that this was going to happen?
Yeah, I don't think the night hours cutting at 9:45 was as a big of an issue. I do think that cutting frequency on Fargo routes, people are anxiously waiting for that to come back, because you're going in the same geographic area, but the bus frequency is less, and so if you miss a bus, it's a long wait for the next bus. So, I'm sure that is probably where the service needs to come back first, is the frequency being increased on some of those popular routes.
Okay, thank you.
Lori, do you have I mean, so the technology to use your smartphone to figure out where the buses are and stuff is really convenient. But does that allow you to kind of track and see how people are using things? So when you start looking at bringing back frequency, there's a kind of a plan that you might use.
Yes, actually, Cole did an analysis of different times of the day and different routes and what the ridership was, weekdays, Saturdays, and we looked at that when we made the decision which routes to adjust. So we do have data by route and by bus stop.
Excellent. And then I guess the other question is in communication. That looks like a great communication. And I mean, I'm certain like there's little asterisks and other things like, hey, we need more drivers. If you know of anyone, nudge, nudge,
Yeah, there are some incentive bonuses for people that drivers recommend other drivers to come and get jobs. And we have a lot of sign-on bonuses and safety bonuses and things like that, and in hopes to attract people as well as our pay increase. But yeah, they're First Transit is doing a lot of advertising. They've had some job fairs, and so they're trying to get more people in the door. Digital too. They're doing digital advertising as well.
Thanks.
Okay, triennial review. Okay, so the triennial 3 years, right? But because of COVID, it's actually a 4-year review this time. So we were notified in December that we would be getting a review from July 2018 through June of 2022. That's the 4-year period. And so we did ask for an extension to February 25th because they wanted us to respond by January, and we had some changing staffing and the issues of driver shortages and things that we were dealing with. So we asked for a bit of an extension, and we were able to meet that extension and submit all of the documentation that the federal transit consultants requested. The list off to the right there, these are the 23 categories of information that that we must be in compliance with, that they have asked us for documentation to prove our compliance. And it's many, 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 many documents. How we our inventories and our plans and all of our policies and things like that, out of our web pages and out of our driver's manuals, and proof of different safety meetings and things like that. So it's a very time consuming. All of our staff have worked hard to pull these things together, and they'll be doing a review, a virtual review of these items, and then having mini meetings with us on each section to review any question areas they have. And then in June, they'll do their final virtual meeting in about a 2-hour meeting for the results for that meeting. And then they give us an opportunity to fix anything that they found that they didn't think that just needed to be fixed. Some language changes, some rules have changed, just something we missed. They'll tell us what those are and give us an opportunity to fix those and give us a deadline to fix those. So it's not like a full audit. It's more of a friendly review and just making sure as a federal partner that we are using our federal grant funds properly and following all of the rules that exist, which are many. Yeah. Julie, you want to add anything to that?
No, I don't really have anything to add. You covered it well. It's like Lori was saying, it's an awful lot of work to pull this together. I don't doubt we do what we do correctly. It's just, did we memorialize it correctly, and can we demonstrate that we did that? So it seems to take a lot of extra time and work to pull that together. But yeah, I always view it in my head as an audit, even though they constantly say it's only a review. So I'm just wired that way. So yeah, but
it's that perfectionist in us.
It is. It truly is.
We just wanted you to be aware of it because it is a very time-consuming process and takes us away from a lot of things while we pull it all together for them.
Yeah.
Next slide.
Yeah. Okay, so you have probably over the past few years heard us talk about the area that is Fargo Moorhead and Dilworth and West Fargo, it will become a transit management area, a transportation management area, if we do exceed the 200,000 population when the census becomes official. So we wanted to just give you a little bit out of the circular where they talk about how it's done and what happens when and if it does come about. So like I said, we'll probably exceed that population once the 2020 census is complete and the area becomes the transportation management area. And this designation could potentially be in place by October 1 of this year, which would put us at the beginning of the federal fiscal year. So the Federal Transit Administration apportions funds for urbanized areas. It goes to states and designated recipients, which then have the responsibility of receiving and apportioning those funds to eligible projects, within the urbanized area. So a designated recipient would be responsible for administering the program on behalf of a UZA with a population of 200,000 or more. So what that's saying is that the funding would come into this area and there would have to be at least one designated recipient that would receive the funding and be able to manage those funds. Designations for the UZAs, which is only, UZA is just urbanized area, of 200,000 or more in population become effective when the governor of a state officially notifies FTA that the designation is and remains in effect until changed by that governor. So it's an official notice of redesignation to the appropriate regional administrator, which in our case is located in Denver. Next slide, please, Brian. So like I said, a state or designated recipient can authorize another public entity to be a direct recipient. So for example, if all the funds came into Moorhead, then they could designate Fargo to be a recipient of our 5307 funds, which are operating and capital at this point. But a direct recipient is a public entity that's legally eligible to apply for and receive funds directly from the Federal Transit Administration. And the designated recipient must inform, we have to do what we call a split letter, which establishes what allocation these 5307 funds will be in the large UZA or TMA. And like I said, FTA can only make grants to direct recipients after we provide this split letter to their office. The amount of funds available is determined by cooperatively by the public transit providers, the MPO, which is Michael's organization, and designated recipients for the UZA. So that has to we all as a group have to get together and decide how we're going to do this. Next slide, Brian. So FTA encourages a single designated recipient for the UZAs that are 200,000 or more, including UZAs that span into more than one state. And the reason they do that is to streamline administration of the program and help foster the coordination. However, nothing precludes the designation of multiple designated recipients that could receive the funding in the UZA. In cases where it extends to more than one state, public transportation providers are located in more than one state, which is our situation. Then the governor of Minnesota and the governor of North Dakota must each participate in the process to designate a recipient. And the state must submit an opinion of council certifying whichever entity it is that's going to be doing this. They have the legal capacity to perform as a designated recipient. So that is kind of a lot of circular speak, but it boils down to we need to get together, decide who's going to be a designated recipient. It would be the transit providers, the MPO, And then we would work with each other to come up with this designated recipient 1 or 2 or however we're going to do it. And then we have to go through each governor in each state to get them to officially designate us to be able to be the eligible designated recipient or recipients to get the funding distributed properly. So that I feel like I covered a lot of stuff that you've probably heard before, but some maybe you haven't. So I'd be happy to answer any questions. No? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so the federal government is supposed to notify us this summer what that amount of money for our UZA will be. And then the UZA split letter needs to be submitted by October 1st of 2022. So we have this coming up on us here soon.
Yeah.
Okay. Next slide.
Thank you.
Annual Achievements Report. Okay, so each year we bring to you the things that we have accomplished this year. And so there is, I've got them in categories here so you can see the big projects. Equipment, of course, is always one of our more expensive projects. We did implement the green light priority project on the traffic signals along the Moorhead bus routes. Those were on October 15th of 2021. It gives the buses a 10-second longer green or an earlier green when they see the buses approaching a traffic signal. And so that is to improve our on-time performance. We have completed our fare box upgrade, and we had our public hearing on our mobile ticketing and our new fare structure. We are waiting for some glitches to be repaired in the software before we release and start this program. And we heard yesterday that they think they have everything worked out, and we'll be able to test it all and give approval to move forward here shortly. We did participate in a procurement with Duluth and some other transit agencies, a consortium of transit agencies, and that has been like a 2-year process of buying buses during the COVID. It caused a lot of issues with the procurement, more safety things being put on the buses, and just a slower process with parts availability and things like that. But we have now completed that and are ready to award those buses here shortly. Moorhead's buying 1 bus and Fargo's buying 8 buses. So this is some grants that we've had open and are ready to fill with these buses that may take a year to 18 months to be delivered. Our Moorhead has 2 paratransit buses that we ordered for replacement in 21. They'll be delivered in 2022. We put all permanent barriers inside all of the buses for driver safety on all of our fleets, Fargo and Moorhead. And we installed air filtration systems on all our buses that clean the air and the surfaces and help with the COVID situation, keeping our drivers safe. Next slide. Fares. We did go fare-free during 2021 through March, and then began charging fares April 1st. We also approved the new account-based fare structure for mobile ticketing and fare capping, which we hope to implement soon, and we'll give a 2-week notice to passengers prior to implementing that new system. And then route changes, there were some minor route changes. Most of them had to do with the Cashwise parking lot, the property owner asking us not to take all the buses to the parking lot anymore. So we routed route 4 and 6 out to the street and on the boulevard and moved a shelter there to service that. And we changed route 9 to service the Career Academy and the Vista Center, and just made and the tweak not to go through the Cashwise parking lot as well. Next slide. Our Moorhead shelters, as I mentioned earlier, we're replacing these 1980 shelters with new shelters. I put a picture up there for you. That is the shelter at Hornbacher's. That's one of the new designs, and it has solar lighting. It's very modern and nice and clean looking. So we did move the Cashwise shelter to the boulevard. We put a brand new shelter at Hornbacher, across from Hornbacher's at St. Joe's. We put a new shelter at the courthouse on 11th Street, and a place for hope, which serves people with disabilities on 12th Avenue South. A new concrete pad was poured as part of a road reconstruction project, so we moved a used shelter to that location to serve the population there. And then we replaced a wood fence with a PVC fence around the Marriott Transfer Hub utilities. We disposed of a shelter that was at the Dilworth Axis and replaced it with one that was previously at the Link FM shelter at the Center Mall. We disposed of that shelter. It had been hit by some snow removal equipment and damaged. And then also we replaced a shelter at Queens on Belsley and 18th that was destroyed by a car in a car accident. Next slide. Facility, do you want to talk about that, Jordan?
Sure. So yeah, in 2021, we did a LED replacement for the Metro Transit garage, both interior and exterior lighting. Pretty much everything, including our administrative offices, was replaced. So we have seen, well, we would have seen a large decrease in our electrical bill, except for rates went up. So we haven't really seen a decrease, but it would have been a lot more than it is had we not seen increases. So facility improvements to the ground transportation center. We did finish out phase 2 of that project. If you haven't been downtown and seen the facility, it is very nice. It is very, very different than it was before. We have a few small things to finish up here in the spring. Some crosswalk painting, striping, some more concrete repairs on the exit, and then a few exterior doors on the west side that have been replaced. So we'll have some very small things to finish up here come this spring. But other than that, it is complete.
Studies and plans, we did complete the 5-year transit development plan, which includes the human services plan, and we also began implementation of a safety plan. Jordan is our safety officer, and he created a plan, and so we are meeting regularly, improving safety, accepting any complaints from passengers and drivers and the public, and addressing anything that they consider to be a safety issue. We began our contract with First Transit in 2021. That's a 2-year contract with options for 3 years, and the dispatchers at the Ground Transportation Center became Fargo employees. And then Matt Buss also hosted the 2021 Dakota Transit Association conference. Next slide. So,
We have a number. Sorry.
Go ahead. Are there any questions you had on that section?
Good update. Thanks, Lori and Julie.
Thank you.
We have a number of contracts that are coming up here in 2022. We'll be going out for bids for everything that we have listed here through the RFP process. Our shelter cleaning has to be replaced. That'll be a 5-year contract to clean our shelters on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. Snow clearing and removal for both the Ground Transportation Center, the Metro Transit Garage, as well as our shelters will be bid out again this year for a 5-year contract. Custodial services for both the Metro Transit Garage and Ground Transportation Center will also be bid out for a 5-year contract. And kind of the largest portion we'll be looking at this year is replacing our Paratransit scheduling software and fixed route operations scheduling software, both of which we use on a day-to-day basis. And we are very excited to see what other replacements are out there for those.
And those software packages, really, technology changes so quickly that it'll be nice to have them replaced. They're 10 years old, and in technology, that's a long time.
Next slide, please.
So Gen Fare, as we've talked about the fare boxes, we just wanted you to see a couple of the screens. This is what our mobile apps look like, and I made a fictitious person called Nick Ed, that has an account balance of $83.50. This is pay as you go, and so the person pays for each ride, and then they earn free rides when they get to $3 in a day, or $42 in 31 days, and $27 in 31 days for a person with disabilities, and $27 in 90 days for a youth. Anyway, they activate their pass on their phone, show it to the fare box screen. It deducts the $1.50. It gives them an embedded transfer. That transfer is good for 90 minutes, so they can finish transferring to whatever buses they need to get to their final destination within that 90-minute time zone or time. And then it tells them, there's a place on the app that tells them what they've spent, how much they've earned, how close they are to getting their free rides, things like that. So that has been tested and is working well on the mobile side. So as soon as they get the smart cards for people who don't have telephone or don't have smartphones running, which they said we could start testing here shortly, we should be able to start the 2-week notice and implementation. And we'll talk about some of our marketing activities later on in this presentation too, so that you can see what we're doing to educate and establish campaigns for educating and knowledge for our passengers and for the many organizations that purchase passes on behalf of their clients. Any questions on that? We hope to have this done no later than April 30th. It's been a long wait to have them fix some of these glitches, but GenVer is almost there. So, Jordan, you have anything you want to add to that? Jordan's been working on this project quite a bit.
Nope, we're close. There's light at the end of the tunnel.
Yes, we hope to get there soon. Next slide.
So some updates regarding mobility management. This month in March here, we're going to be resuming in-person travel training at the GTC. Since the pandemic started, we've been doing a more stripped down or scaled down version via webinar, which has been going pretty well, but I'm anxious and excited to get back into doing this in person. In the process of updating and getting the 2022 FM Ride Source Directory printed. It's with the Fargo form printing right now, so hopefully we should get that in a few weeks. And then recently updated the MAP Paratransit brochure for the year, so that is done and out. The Title VI program, as we mentioned earlier, working on getting that approved for submitting to FTA. And then another thing that we have to do every 3 years is work on the goals for DVE for Fargo and Moorhead. So that is something I'm actively working on right now to establish what those goals will be for the next 3 years. Just an update on paratransit applications. In 2021, I processed 288 paratransit applications, which was up from 203 in 2020, but fairly consistent with 2019 before the pandemic started. I'm also currently still a member of the Civil and Human Rights Task Force through Freedom Resource Center, where we discuss all sorts of issues regarding mobility for people with disabilities in the area. So just kind of a quick rundown of some of the things I've been working on. If there's any questions for me.
Okay, next slide.
All right, thank you.
So we have quite a few slides about our ridership from both 2021 annual ridership and ridership through the current year. So I'll just do kind of a broad overview of a couple of trends that we've been seeing. 2020 and 2021 have definitely been interesting years for us in terms of ridership. Start of COVID back in March of 2020, we saw a significant decrease initially. Then once we went fare free, over time we saw an increase of our general ridership. With students and the local colleges going to virtual learning, we saw a decrease in college ridership in 2020. and we've seen that steadily increase in 2021. A couple things of note on this slide here. We had our Link FM service for the street fair in 2021. That was canceled in 2020. The only event that we did was, I believe, the Unglued Craft Festival. And then, as we kind of spoke about before, Paratransit has seen a significant increase. There have been a lot of new Paratransit rides from 2021 compared to 2020. We're just still seeing that increase this year. Next slide, please.
So Moorhead too has seen a decrease in ridership on all of our routes, and so we do believe that there's a recovery coming. It's still slow, and we are definitely not back up to the 2019 levels that we were. Next slide.
This just kind of shows a breakdown of the colleges. We do see a general increase from every single one of them except for NDSCS from 2020 to 2021. That kind of correlates to students returning to in-person classes. Next slide, please. And with this, you can kind of take a look and see comparatively to 2020 to 2021 to 2019, the different levels of ridership that we had. You can definitely see that 2019 is higher for both Fargo and Moorhead. 2021 is slowly climbing up in terms of ridership. Like I said, with going fare-free in 2020, we did see a general increase towards the end of the year, and then we resumed fares in April of 2021. We did see a fairly drastic drop-off in ridership, and we're just slowly seeing that recover as time is going on. Next slide, please. And then, as the previous slide showed with Paratransit, we are seeing a significant increase. We're actually above 2019 levels in Paratransit, so definitely seeing a lot of ridership there. And more, Lori, do you want to talk about senior ride at all?
Yeah, senior ride in 2021 is recovering. You can see we're not back up to 2019 levels, but we're right in between, and it's seen a steady increase. Next slide. So here's senior ride between the Moorhead and Dilworth systems in 2021. Moorhead saw an increase of 25% over 2020, and Dilworth a 6% decrease over 2020. But when you look at the long term, we started senior ride in 2008, so I put the whole span there for you. We're up to the levels of about 10 years ago. So but we are definitely increasing. 21% up from the previous year. So I believe that that's going to continue growing and recover fairly well. Next slide.
So this just gives a quick look at on-time performance for the Fargo routes. We have a 90% on-time performance goal for all of our routes, just meaning that a bus can be at a bus stop no more than 5 minutes late and no more than 1 minute early to be in that time frame that we want. The Paratransit can't be 15 minutes late or 15 minutes early, and then that's kind of in the Paratransit rider's pickup window. So overall, for Fargo routes, there's a bit of a mixed bag in terms of on-time performance increases and decreases. We did see some issues with Route 20. It's kind of the biggest outlier. We are looking at ways that we can improve that route to increase on-time performance going forward. Next slide, please.
So Moorhead's on-time performance from 2020 to 2021 did improve. There was just that slight decrease in Route 1, but it definitely was on improvement. Almost all of them met the 90%. Route 3 is still on a long-term detour for the 21st Street grade separation, so that one continues to have issues with trains and delays because of that. Next slide.
This just goes through some of the feedbacks that we saw in 2021. Police security presence either on our vehicles or at the ground transportation center. We have potential issues with passenger behavior. If emergency services are called to either our vehicles or the ground transportation center. if there's any falls or injuries, either on our buses or at the Ground Transportation Center. Policy issues generally have to deal with either issues that passengers bring up or issues that we see with staff members, and the single biohazard back in 2021. So a good majority of this is just documentation, especially with police and security presence, just writing down that we did experience that either at Ground Transportation Center or on buses. Next slide, please. We did see a bit of an increase in total collisions of non-preventable from 2020 to 2021. Generally, non-preventable deals with either other drivers or weather conditions where our bus drivers aren't able to prevent collisions. Preventable stayed consistent at 2020 or at 21 from 2020 to 2021, and insignificant collisions did go up by 2. Next slide, please.
Okay, so now we're into 2022. So we've got data for January and February in, and ridership on senior ride is up 11% in 2022 so far this year. Next slide.
And as I touched on before, we were fare-free this time last year. So comparing fare-free with ridership to our current ridership, we did see a lot of our main Fargo routes go down ridership-wise. You see that we still have an 18% increase in Paratransit, so that's still going strong there. And kind of the major portion of where we're getting an increase in ridership is seeing college students return this last semester, getting as high as 271% increase on Route 33, which is by far our most popular NDSU route. So even though we did see a decrease in a lot of our main routes throughout Fargo-Moorhead, the college ridership did push us up to see an overall 1% increase in Fargo. Next slide, please.
So Moorhead sees 32% change, a decrease in ridership when you compare the first 2 months of 2022. And again, like Cole said, that has a lot to do with the fare-free versus not fare-free, and the fact that we have fewer riders because of that. Next slide.
And this shows a breakdown of the increase in college ridership. We see it completely across the board. Just a significant increase from 2021 to 2022 due to college students returning to in-person classes. Next slide, please. And this is just a quick look at on-time performance from 2021 to 2022 through March 5th of both years. We are seeing a pretty significant increase in a lot of our routes, which is good to see, especially with all of the winter weather that we've been having over the last couple of months. Our team at First Transit's been doing a very good job at doing whatever they can to encourage drivers to stay on time and distributing any sort of information that they need to do so. Next slide, please.
Yeah, Moorhead's been doing okay too, considering the winter weather. I think that on-time performance is bound to go down with as many snowstorms and late starts and issues that we've had. But we've been trying to give people notice and tell them to take their time, plan their trips, and it's been going pretty good. Next slide.
This is just a quick look at the incidents that we've experienced so far this year, majority of which being passenger behavior. One fall and a handful of policy issues kind of make up what we've seen so far through February. Next slide, please. With this, it shows our collisions in 2022. We have seen quite a few rear endings throughout the last couple months, again, due to the winter weather. Majority were unpreventable with a single preventable accident. Next slide, please.
Next slide, please. All right, I'm going to talk a little bit about the marketing activities surrounding our MatBus Connect launch. So as you probably know, MatBus Connect is our new payment system, which features mobile ticketing and smart cards Connect offers riders the option to pay for rides with their smart card or cell phone on the bus. Riders can add funds to their Connect account anywhere or anytime using the app or web portal. Our tentative launch date is May 2nd, 2022. Right now we're fine-tuning and making edits to the app and website and making sure the fare boxes are functioning properly, working with GenFare to make sure the transfers are functioning as they should, and as well as putting the finishing touches on the app and web portal. We're preparing some educational materials. We're making a frequently asked question page for the MatBus website concerning the Connect Cards app and online portal, as well as creating a getting started pamphlet. And we're looking at creating materials to help organizations set up accounts to purchase paratransit and business passes for their clients and employees. We're also working with outside vendors to produce educational and promotional videos, as well as digital marketing. We're working with a video production team to create a series of short instructional Connect videos to teach customers and organizations how to use the app and web portal, as well as working with a local marketing firm to create web and radio commercials and digital ads. We're focusing on education and attracting new technology fluent riders. We're looking into targeted online ads to attract people who use mobile apps like Facebook or YouTube and Spotify. The mobile payment options are more prevalent on other transit systems and shopping environments. People like to be able to just pay with their phone. So these options are going to modernize our payment system and give riders more convenient ways to pay and ride. Riders don't have to carry cash or come down to the GTC to buy passes anymore. So it's going to be a big change, but I think it'll be a very welcome one.
So Connect has been the biggest thing we've been working on so far this spring, but here's also just kind of an overview of what the rest of 2022 is looking like for us. You may have seen that the mask mandate was recently extended to April 18th. So just a short extension this time rather than some of the previous ones have been much longer. So we'll see what comes after that point, but we've been communicating that to our riders and drivers as well. As usual, we do have our Link FM event service that those events have kind of slowly been coming back on, well, offline from going online or being canceled due to COVID. So we have this weekend, we have the Celtic Festival service on Saturday. And another upcoming event is our Earth Week promotion, Get Your Can on the Bus in mid-April. And that is the one where we give free rides to people who board with an empty aluminum can, and we gather those cans for recycling and recycle them and use the money we get from recycling to donate to a local charity. So we are also looking to, just as a general philosophy, to have a more sustained advertising presence throughout the year, rather than focusing on these kind of blips of particular events like Get Your Can on the Bus or Street Fair, things like that, but a more sustained awareness within the community, primarily looking at a lot more digital than we've done in the past. So a lot more of those online ads, Spotify ads, things like that. We're also working toward, especially with Connect coming up, this goal of creating more accessible content to help people understand how the system works. So new riders, existing riders, hopefully trying to put together more short, digestible videos that we can post on social media, post on our website, and direct people to learn about those, frequently asked questions. This summer, we will be updating our How to Ride video, and that is our really comprehensive video that we use for our travel training workshops. We also direct people to it on our website, especially for brand new riders, it really takes you through everything you need to know to start riding the system. So we need to update that to include the new MapBus Connect information. We're going to update some of our video shots for the remodeled GTC, so those aren't out of date anymore. We are also looking to try something a little bit new, create a year-round campaign that helps us update the community and riders about system improvements. So basically, it's consistent branded messaging so that we can have an easy way to notify people of new things that are happening. So if we put in a new shelter, we can put out an announcement that it's part of this effort. Grand reopening of the GTC, whenever those last few changes are done, will probably be a launching point for that, maybe later this summer. And also just a quick update about, we had gained a Moorhead Marketing Communications intern last summer, and she has been continuing with us into 2022 and expected to join us again more fully this semester, since classes went back on campus more and more in person. She's not been with us quite as much, but we're looking forward to having her back more often this summer, helping out with things like our How to Ride video. And anyone have any questions on marketing? Otherwise, I can turn it over to Jordan.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the hot topic of fuel. So in 2021, we averaged, our average fuel price was about $1.70 a gallon. So our total budget, our total cost of fuel for the year is about just under $650,000, which is well under our budgeted amount there of $755,000. So like I said earlier, we bid fuel out 6 months in advance. So fuel for the first and second quarters of 2022 was bid in July 21. And that amount came in, or that bid came in at $1.23 a gallon. And then just a couple months ago in January, we accepted bids for third and fourth quarter of this year. And those came in at $1.78 a gallon. So we got in ahead of the curve, and we were able to get some pretty good prices for this year, as fuel prices after our January award started to go up. So our average fuel price for 2022 is $1.51, which is actually less than 2021. So we're looking at a total anticipated cost of fuel of $480,000. So again, our budget did not change from 2021, so we will, be well within our budget there of $755,000. So going forward, like I said earlier, we'll bid out fuel for the first part of 2023 in July. Hopefully, if fuel prices are somewhat stable and predictable, which obviously they're not, then hopefully we'll get some good prices beginning into 2023. We did not, or I did not include any type of huge increase in 2023, as we are expecting fuel prices to come back down. So fingers crossed that happens for all of us, not just our operations, but everyone else out there filling up their gas tank too. It's hard to fill up these days. So take transit. You don't have to fill your car if you ride transit. Any questions on fuel? If not, I see we're at our end of our agenda here. So
I did put some informational items in there, Article 2, for anyone who's interested in that, mostly about all the driver shortages and wage increases across the nation to try to attract more drivers. So we're open to any questions you may have or any other issues that you'd like to bring to our attention.
I'm just going to say I'm impressed with all the work. I know those reports, especially it was one slide, but that was probably a huge amount of work in terms of the reporting that you have to do for the triennial, or I don't know what it is for 4 years.
They still call it a triennial. Thank you. Well, we don't have a chair anymore, so if everybody feels like there's nothing else, I guess that would be Someone wants to adjourn?
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
That's first. Anybody else? Second?
This is Paul. I'll second that.
All right. Thank you, Paul.
Mhm.
All right. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes and we're adjourned.